The blinking cursor mocked me from the blank document on my screen. I was supposed to be drafting a proposal for a new marketing campaign, but my mind was miles away, replaying the same scene over and over. It had started subtly, like a low hum beneath the surface of our lives. Gemma, my wife, had always been independent, but lately she had become distant. Her phone was perpetually glued to her hand, angled away from my view. Late nights at the office turned into girls' trips, the most recent being a weekend in Las Vegas. Vegas, of all places. Kiernan, a 43-year-old IT specialist, wasn't born yesterday. I knew the city's reputation, but Gemma was adamant. "I need to unwind," Shed said, her eyes pleading. "It's just Maya and Astrid. We're going to see a show, maybe hit the casinos a little." I wanted to believe her. I truly did. 10 years. 10 years we'd been married. We'd built a life together, a home filled with laughter and love, or so I thought. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing, nurtured by Gemma's increasingly erratic behavior. The girls' trip was the tipping point. It wasn't just the destination. It was the forced cheerfulness in her voice when she told me about it, the way she avoided my gaze. It was the feeling deep in my gut that something was terribly wrong. I started small. A casual glance at her phone when she left it unattended. Deleted messages, a cleared browser history, nothing concrete but enough to fuel my suspicion. Then came the credit card bill, a charge at a fancy restaurant, Bellagio fine dining at Red for two. I confronted her, of course. It was a business dinner, Shed said, her voice tight. Maya's friend from college is a sommelier there. We just caught up. A sommelier, in Las Vegas, on a girls' trip. The lies were becoming more elaborate, more desperate. I felt like I was drowning in them. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My work suffered. I was a shell of my former self, consumed by the gnawing certainty that the woman I loved was betraying me. I confided in my best friend, Linus. He was a gruff, no-nonsense type, but fiercely loyal. "You need to know the truth, Kiernan," he said, his voice firm. "Hire someone, a private investigator, get proof." I hesitated. The thought of invading Gemma's privacy felt wrong, but the alternative, living in this agonizing limbo, was worse. So I did it. I contacted a local investigator named Mallory. She was professional, discreet, and surprisingly empathetic. "I've seen this 1,000 times, Mr. Kiernan," Shed said, her voice gentle. "Just give me the details and I'll get you the answers you need." The waiting was excruciating. Every phone call, every text message sent my heart racing. I jumped at shadows, imagining Gemma's lies lurking around every corner. Then, a week later, Mallory called. "I have something for you, Mr. Kiernan," she said, her voice somber. "Can you meet me at my office tomorrow morning?" I barely slept that night. My stomach churned with a mixture of dread and anticipation. I knew deep down that whatever Mallory had to show me would shatter my world. The next morning I sat in Mallory's sterile office, my hands clammy. She placed a thick envelope on the table. "I am sorry, Mr. Kiernan," she said, her eyes filled with sympathy. "It's not good." I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs. Gemma, in Las Vegas, not with Maya and Astrid, with a man, a younger man. They were holding hands, laughing, kissing. They looked happy. There were restaurant bills, hotel receipts, even a video clip of them entering a jewelry store. The final piece of evidence was a copy of a marriage license application. Gemma's name was on it, and the man's name, Reese. I stared at the photographs, my mind reeling. It wasn't just a fling. It was a whole other life. A life Gemma had been leading behind my back for how long? "We dug a little deeper, Mr. Kiernan," Mallory said, her voice barely a whisper. "Reese isn't just some random guy she met in Vegas. He's her personal trainer. She's been seeing him for years. Years." The word echoed in my head, a deafening roar. Years of lies, years of deceit, years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I stood up abruptly, knocking over my chair. "I need to go," I stammered, my voice choked with emotion. I stumbled out of the office into the blinding sunlight. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I drove home in a daze, my mind numb. I walked into our house, the house we had built together, the house that now felt like a prison. Gemma wasn't home. Of course she wasn't. She was probably with Reese, living her secret life, laughing at my naivete. I went to our bedroom, the room where we had shared so many intimate moments. I opened her closet, And there it was, a small velvet box. I opened it. Inside was a diamond ring, a ring that wasn't from me, a ring that Reese had probably given her. I closed the box, my hands trembling. I couldn't breathe. I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My world had shattered. My life was a lie, and the woman I loved had destroyed everything. When Gemma finally came home, she found me sitting on the floor, surrounded by photographs and documents. She gasped, her eyes widening in horror. "Kiernan, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I stood up, my face like stone. "Don't play innocent, Gemma," I said, my voice cold. "I know everything." She tried to deny it, of course. She tried to explain it away, to minimize it, to make me believe that it was all a misunderstanding. But I wasn't buying it. I had seen the photographs. I had read the documents. I had heard the truth. "It's over, Gemma," I said, my voice flat. "I want a divorce." She begged me to reconsider. She cried, she pleaded, she even threatened, but my mind was made up. I couldn't stay with her. I couldn't forgive her. The trust was gone. The love was gone. All that was left was bitterness and resentment. The divorce was messy. Gemma fought me every step of the way. She tried to take half of everything, even though she had been unfaithful. She tried to turn our friends against me, spreading lies and rumors. But I stood my ground. I had the evidence. I had the truth on my side. In the end, she didn't get away with it. The judge ruled in my favor. I got the house. I got the majority of our assets, and I got my freedom, but the scars remained. The pain lingered. The betrayal haunted me. I moved out of our house, the house that held so many painful memories. I started a new life in a new city. I focused on my work. I spent time with my friends. I tried to heal. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt like giving up, when the pain was too much to bear. But I kept going. I kept fighting. I kept believing that one day I would find happiness again. Months later, I received a phone call from Mallory, the private investigator. She had some news about Gemma and Reese. "They're in trouble, Mr. Kiernan," she said, her voice grim. "Reese was arrested for fraud. He's been scamming people for years. Gemma was involved." I felt a pang of something, not sympathy, not exactly, more like a sense of satisfaction, karma. It had finally caught up with them. "What about Gemma?" I asked. "She's facing charges too," Mallory said. "She could go to prison." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I didn't want Gemma to go to prison, but I couldn't deny that a part of me felt vindicated. She had betrayed me. She had lied to me. She had destroyed my life. And now she was paying the price. I never saw Gemma again. I never spoke to her. I moved on with my life. I eventually found love again, with a woman who was honest, loyal, and kind. Her name was Estelle, and she taught me that not all women are like Gemma, that there is still good in the world, that it is possible to love and be loved in return. Looking back, I realized that Gemma's betrayal, as painful as it was, made me stronger. It taught me to trust my instincts, to value honesty, and to never settle for anything less than I deserve. It also taught me that karma is real, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on and living a happy life. Years passed. I built a new life with Estelle in Portland, Oregon. The rain was a constant companion, but so was her warmth. We had a quiet, fulfilling existence. One evening, a few years after my divorce, I received a message on social media. It was from Maya, one of Gemma's old friends. I hesitated before opening it. "Kiernan," it read, "I know it's been a long time, but I felt you deserved to know the truth. The Vegas trip, it wasn't the first time. Gemma and Reese had been seeing each other for years, as you know. But what you don't know is that Reese wasn't the only one. There were others. Many others. Gemma was addicted to the attention, the thrill of the chase. She never really loved you, Kiernan. I am so sorry." I stared at the message, numb. I thought I had processed everything. I thought I had moved on. But this was a whole new level of betrayal. It wasn't just Reese. It was a pattern, a compulsion. A fundamental lack of respect for me, for our marriage, for everything we had built together. I closed my laptop, feeling a wave of anger wash over me. Not anger at Gemma, pity. I pitied her. She was a broken person, driven by her own insecurities and needs, and in the end she had destroyed herself. I looked at Estelle, who was sitting beside me reading a book. Her face was serene, her eyes filled with love. I reached out and took her hand. "I love you," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "I love you too," she replied, squeezing my hand. In that moment, I realized that I had truly moved on. Gemma was a ghost of the past, a painful memory that no longer had the power to hurt me. I had found happiness again. I had found love again, and I was grateful. A few more years trickled by, filled with the quiet joy of a life well lived. One day I received a strange letter in the mail. It was postmarked from Las Vegas. I opened it, my heart pounding. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it was written one word, karma. I turned the paper over. On the back was a photograph, a recent photograph. It was Gemma. She looked terrible. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken. She was standing in front of a pawn shop, holding a small velvet box. The box was open, and inside there was a ring. The ring that Reese had given her. The ring that I had found in her closet so many years ago. The ring that she had probably pawned to pay for her next fix. I stared at the photograph, feeling a profound sense of sadness, not for myself, for Gemma. She had chased after fleeting pleasures, sacrificing everything of value in the process, and now she had nothing. She was alone, broken, and forgotten. I closed my eyes, saying a silent prayer for her. Then I tore up the photograph and threw it in the trash. It was time to let go. It was time to forgive. It was time to move on for good. I walked outside into the Portland rain. Estelle was waiting for me, holding an umbrella. I smiled at her and she smiled back. We walked hand in hand into the future. A future filled with love, happiness, and peace. A future that Gemma would never know. This is my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. A story of how I survived the worst thing that could ever happen to me and came out stronger on the other side. And a story that proves that karma always comes calling, sooner or later. Remember, dear reader, that even in the darkest of times there is always hope. There is always the possibility of a new beginning. And there is always the promise of a brighter future. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on love. And never let the bitterness of the past define who you are. Learn from your mistakes, forgive those who have wronged you, and move on with your life. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Your happiness, your peace, your future. And that's something that no one can ever take away from you.